Okay, very excited to be joined here by Governor Mike Dunleavy and his running mate, Nancy Dahlstrom. Hello, Governor. Welcome.
Good to be here, Jeff.
Nancy Dahlstrom, welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Former Corrections Commissioner, so if I get in trouble, I'm calling you.
We already have a room for you waiting.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Well, first, talking about Nancy Dahlstrom here, Governor. Now it's this new election system we have, and before you run in separate primaries, governor, lieutenant governor. This is the first time where you pick your running mate, so I want to start off by asking you why you chose Nancy Dahlstrom as your running mate.
Well, I didn't want to be put in jail since she's the corrections commissioner. No, I'm kidding. So Nancy has experience in the private sector. She was a legislator for many years, and she was very successful as commissioner in corrections. And we are, one of the emphasis we have had in our administration is public safety. And I think she's done a very good job in that role. There's a lot of great people in Alaska. We talked with a number of great folks in Alaska, but I would say it was the combination of the private sector, the legislative experience, and the executive experience in a difficult role. And she's done very good in that. And I think she's going to make a great lieutenant governor. And Jeff, God forbid, if I choke on a steak or fall down a flight of stairs, I believe that Nancy can handle the reins of government.
Well, Nancy, there was kind of a rumor for a while that you were maybe being considered. When did he kind of ask you, and was it a yes right away? Or I know you had the corrections job and you were previously a legislator, so you're familiar with kind of how daunting it can be. Were you surprised, and why did you decide to say yes?
Well, Jeff, the governor and I have been working together for the last 3.5 years in these positions that we have right now. And so in one way, we'd both been interviewing each other for the last 3.5 years, but who knew for what, right? So I knew that he and I had a very good working relationship, that he's a hardworking person, I'm a hardworking person, we both love Alaska. I felt like I had more that I could give to the state of Alaska. And so when the governor asked me to consider this position, it was something that I did consider it. I had some heartfelt talks with my husband, and I was excited and honored to be able to tell the governor yes, that I would like to serve with him.
Now, Governor, in 2018, there was, I think, 6 people running for lieutenant governor, so you really didn't know. It ended up being Kevin Meyer. Now you pick your running mate. Does that make it easier in some sense that you have that certainty as far as who's going to be your running mate, as far as waiting, opposed to waiting until after August?
It does, and you're able to choose somebody that after conversations you realize that whether you're in alignment on a number of things or you're not. So hopefully you choose the right person that you are in alignment with and. That doesn't mean that Nancy's a carbon copy of myself. She's her own person, and I'm sure through this discussion you'll find that out. But nonetheless, I think she's competent, smart, experienced, and again, I think she'll do a great job as lieutenant governor. But also, as I mentioned, Jeff, God forbid if something happens.
That's the big one. It's like, can you be lieutenant governor, right? Can you be governor?
We're going to try to keep him real healthy, Jeff.
So I want to ask about the dividend. You recently announced the dividend's coming out in September, about a month early from the normal month of October, and it's about $3,200, which is a lot more than I think a lot of folks thought when session started. The price of oil went up, and there was some more money. You ran on the full dividend, and then the legislature, it's been a big fight on that, the amount. Then it was 50-50. You had come out for that. The legislature working group had kind of gone with the 50-50, and then it got to be more after the price of oil went up. So I kind of want to ask where you are on this dividend, and it's plagued us for since 2016. Since it was vetoed by former Governor Walker. Where do you think we can finalize this issue instead of it being just every year being this big fight?
Yeah, great question. It was in 2016 when this uniquely Alaskan institution was, for lack of a better phrase, was destroyed by the previous administration, and we've been wrestling over the parts of it ever since. And so, I think it's a terrific program, a terrific institution. The permanent fund itself, but also the program that shares its oil wealth through its royalties with the people of Alaska. When you talk about the 50-50, the purpose in the 50-50 was to have a discussion with a full fiscal plan, which included a spending limit, no new taxation without a vote of the people. And the 50-50, Jeff, the real story there is the 50-50 concept would not be implemented unless it went to the people for a vote, a constitutional amendment vote. Because, and I've said this over and over and over again, in our Constitution, we have an initiative and referendum process, a democratic process for the people of Alaska to weigh in directly with regard to legislation. And if we change this, if the legislature was to change unilaterally the dividend, the people have every opportunity to repeal that bill, repeal that law. And then that gets us back to where we are now in somewhat of a chaotic situation. So it's my hope that we can send something to the people of Alaska so they have an opportunity to vote on it. And then that way we get certainty.
So Nancy, I want to ask you, you were a legislator, and Governor, you were a legislator. So the legislature obviously has kind of control over the purse, but it just every year since 2016, it's been this big fight. Is that kind of your understanding, or do you agree with that kind of concept that the people, it goes to the people and then it gets resolved that way, or can it be resolved legislatively?
Well, interesting you had asked me that question, because the first time I ran for office in 2002, Jeff, one of the tenets that I ran on was that any changes with the PFD should go to the people to vote on. And other than that, we should follow the law. Let's follow the statute that's in place. Otherwise, let's let the people choose. And so I'm thrilled that the governor feels that strongly about trusting the people and what it is that they want, and then government following through with that.
I want to ask about the gas line. You just went down to Texas, and you were actually in Asia as well. And now with the situation in Ukraine and gas supply issues in Europe, and the price of gas is up, it seems like every governor gets pretty close to the gas line. Murkowski, Palin, Ajia, Walker was talking. I mean, it goes back even back into the 70s and 80s. Is there any more chance right now of a gas line being built because of the turmoil in Europe?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not going to mislead the people of Alaska. Once we get an agreement, or it looks like it's certain, then we'll have a discussion with the people of Alaska. But right now, I think the war between Russia and the Ukraine, the disinvestment from Russian investment, for example, in Sakhalin Island in the far eastern Siberian area of Russia, that the Japanese were partners with some oil companies and the Russians in, that deal looks like it's fallen apart. That, coupled with the fact that the Fukushima issue still is impacting Japanese policy in terms of energy generation, and the concept of carbon is really taking hold in Japan. They want to get away from carbon as much as possible. So that leaves the Japanese little choice but gas. Well, how is it different for us? Well, the Biden administration is making it more and more difficult. It's just a fact to be able to drill for oil and gas. We have a fully permitted gas line. That's the difference between this gas line and other gas lines. It's probably the lowest, probably has the lowest carbon footprint of any gas project in the world. Why do I say that? We've never flared our gas in the slope. We re-inject our gas into the reservoir. This gas line would be fairly simple in terms of connections. Once we get it down to Tidewater, if it is at Nikiski, you have a depleted basin in Cook Inlet that carbon could be sequestered there as well. And we're pretty close to Japan. And so overall, the carbon footprint of this thing is small, and I think the Japanese like that.
When you were in Asia, were they, hey, we want this now? Were they really, was it more interested than the past, or was it still?
Things have happened pretty quick for the Japanese, and they'll tell you that themselves in terms of the invasion of Russia, and some policy decisions that they're making. But when we were there, they absolutely made it clear that they want more gas. And they were very, very appreciative of the 50-year relationship we've had with Japan. In '69, as you remember, well, you weren't born then, I don't think, in '69, were you, Jeff?
84.
All right, anyway. So in '69, Alaska pioneered the LNG export industry for the United States out of Nikiski. We were the first state to transport LNG to another country, and that was our friends in Japan. That went on for almost 50 years until the gas started to run low in Cook Inlet. But they are very interested in securing another supply of gas. And so the issues surrounding the war, carbon, their need for gas, their proximity to Alaska, our relationship with them over 50 years. This project has all the permits, federal permits. It also has a $26.3 billion loan guarantee that came out of a bill that President Biden signed. So I think all of that bodes well for this project, and we're seeing more and more folks get interested in the project. We think something's going to happen, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves until we actually have some agreement signed.
What about just why hasn't the state going back decades, ever at least built the thing to Fairbanks, where they have this issue with the smoke and the inversion. I mean, if we got it to Fairbanks, that would help people in Fairbanks with the price of energy, but it would also get the project moving along, a third of the way.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that be something the state could?
Oh yeah, that's a real possibility as well. And so we're looking at a number of different options. That's one option. As you remember, when I was in the Senate, 2 bills were passed. One was the larger pipeline with an export concept attached to it. One was a smaller pipeline that would terminate around Point McKenzie for in-state gas. Both of those projects really are about getting gas to Alaskans, lowering the cost of energy, as you mentioned. So no, that's a real possibility as well. So we're looking at a couple different options. But again, if we can get the private sector, which it looks like they are interested, to get on board and then invest, that I think bodes well for an overall project. But nothing's off the table.
Nancy, I want to ask you. You mentioned the public safety being a big element of the campaign and the governor's agenda. Mm-hmm. You were the Corrections Commissioner. This COVID situation happened, and we've talked about this before. There was the courts, and there was the trials got stopped, and there was a lot of people kind of incarcerated who hadn't had a trial yet or even been indicted. Where are we at now? I know you're no longer commissioner, but I'm sure you're familiar. Where's the prison situation at now? And then more broadly in crime, we know in Anchorage, it seems like there's all kinds of crime happening, small crime and even some larger crime. There was a few months ago, a murder, a murder over Taco Lake by my house. I mean, the murder friend, he was running through my neighborhood. I saw the guy, the police. So it's like every day we hear about some horrible kind of crime. But where are we at with the prisons and COVID and the backlog, and then maybe more broadly and kind of from the public safety
Well,
issue?
fortunately, we have prisons because unfortunately, there's some people that's where they need to be, and they need to be there for a long time for various different reasons. We are still backlogged. The courts have opened, and they are still moving forward, but it takes a while to effectively give everybody the time that they deserve and going through the process, legally, so that all their rights are secured for them. The commission's Corrections Commissioner now, Jen Winkleman, is doing an excellent job. I know she works with the courts on a regular basis, communicates with them. We'll always have a high number in the prisons. And thank goodness that we have more, people are more aware of what's going on around them. So on one hand, it seems like crime is up, and it is in some areas, but in others, it's way down. We just have more public awareness, and I think that helps keep everybody safe.
Jeff, overall in this state, crime is actually down considerably compared to a few years ago before we got into office. We made that one of our, the main focus was partially public safety. And if you recall, there were news articles almost every day in the paper, cars being broken into, tools being stolen. One of the hottest businesses back then was security cameras, security for your lot if you had a business. People were really concerned as to where they even parked their car in places like Anchorage. And you also remember a couple years ago, the murders. There were 30-some murders in Anchorage. The FBI statistics show that the crime rates have dropped significantly across the board since we got in office, and we made public safety a real focus of ours. We've beefed up the police. We've just recently passed some more bills regarding trafficking and sexual assault and protection of our most vulnerable. We've put resources in the police, the prosecutors, and in the prisons. And so when you're reading about crime, for example, the lower 48 and all these cities going up, Alaska, compared to the lower 48 and what it was a few years ago, we're actually in better shape when it comes to crime.
I want to ask about homelessness. Anchorage has a big problem with this, and this is something that our local government has failed to really address going back a long time. What kind of role do you think the state has in solving this? I mean, it's really an Anchorage problem, but it's Juneau too, and Fairbanks. There's all over this issue. It's nationwide. It's been an issue. Housing's part of it, but there's other crime, and there's mental health, and there's a drug addiction, alcohol addiction. Is there a role for the state, or is it more up to the local communities to solve these problems?
Well, Jeff, I can tell you that now when a prisoner is being released, one of the things that happens is an institutional probation officer works with them and asks, do you have housing and where is it? And do you have the voucher that you need to go get your your state ID? Make sure all these things are in place. Now, once folks are released from prison, 25% of those that are released have a probation officer that works with them. There's kind of a misnomer that everybody does, But I know those POs they check in with them, they make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they're in the rehabilitation classes that they have been required to by the courts. But you can lead a horse to water. You can only do so much, and people have to want to make some of those changes on their own.
Jeff, and you also have to differentiate between the homeless themselves. In other words, there are folks that have lost their home because of economic issues or some other unfortunate issue. Those folks can be taken care of. We have a number of programs in AHFC, for example, that helps deal with assistance with rent, assistance with getting a home. You have another group of people that are suffering from some mental health issues as well as substance abuse issues, substance addiction issues. And those are issues that I think we're all going to have to look at in taking a different approach for those folks. And what does that mean? Certainly partnering with our cities, the state can assist with some data, but also we have to decide if and how we're going to deal with those individuals on an individual basis. If somebody needs to take their medicines on a regular basis so that they can continue to function in our society because they are suffering from a mental health issue, we're going to have that discussion as to how that happens on a regular basis.
Well, we all see, yesterday I was driving, I saw a guy passed out in the street. We all see every day, especially in Anchorage, the trails, the parks, and it just seems like nothing can, and again, this is an Anchorage specific issue, but it just seems like nothing can solve it. And people come here to visit, and it's a tourist economy, and lots of friends of mine, women, are afraid to go on the trails because of some of the problems that exist out there.
I think it could be addressed. I always say this: we sent people to the moon in the '60s. We can address these problems. It's not specific to Alaska, as you know. If you go to Seattle, if you go to any large city, it's a growing problem. But again, I think those folks that you see are different than the folks that have lost their house. I think the folks that you see are folks, once again, that have mental health issues and addiction issues, and that's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to really come up with an approach that deals with that.
There's the visible homelessness, you're right, and then there's a lot of people who are on somebody's couch or they're in a shelter, they're somewhere we don't see them, but there's this visible problem that not only affects those people, it's horrible for them, but it's also difficult for everybody else who are living here.
Right.
Governor, I want to ask you about kind of this topic of earmarks now. It's back. I guess they're calling it congressionally directed spending. Senator Murkowski has been lately, just another $500 million in Alaska earmark or congressionally directed spending, and there was in some of these ARPA and COVID bills some money for Alaska, which was kind of offset some of the budget. I guess where are you on that? I know it's a kind of federal issue, but she's been bringing it home lately. Dan Sullivan is not doing the earmarks, but I guess where are you on that and some of this money that's been coming into the state lately?
Yeah, right. As always, Jeff, we're going to look at whatever appropriation there is and whatever the type of spending it is. You always got to make sure that there's not certain strings attached to it that are going to obligate Alaska in the future. But as mentioned, there's been a money dump on not just Alaska, but all the states as a result of what happened with this virus and the subsequent economic carnage that has been unleashed because of the reaction to it. I would say that in Alaska, once again, we're going to be focused on things like roads and bridges. We're going to be focused on energy projects. We're going to be focused on food security issues, because one thing that the pandemic taught me, and I think a whole bunch of other governors, but especially up here, is you're only about 10 days away from a food crisis in Alaska, because we rely on food imports from the lower 48. We used to produce about half of our food. We have to import about 90% of our food now. But anything that's going to help with our food security, our energy security, building out infrastructure so that we could capitalize on our mining plays and our oil and gas plays is something we're going to look at. We're also going to look at any type of energy projects, even renewables. We'll have a conversation regarding nukes as well. And so energy is going to be the key. Food's going to be the key. Affordable housing is also going to be the key because of the cost of supply and the supply chain issues. So we'll look at any of the spending or any of the potential funds that are headed our way. We'll look at those funds in terms of how it's going to help Alaska, not just today, but 10, 15, 25 years from now.
Yeah, those micronuclear reactors, if those end up going, that would be a big, especially for rural Alaska.
Exactly.
The reduction of the cost of energy it's massive.
Exactly. Yep.
Nancy, I want to ask you, if you win, you'll be lieutenant governor, you'll be overseeing elections. I actually want to ask both of you, did you vote for the new system? Do you like the new system? I think it's very confusing. A lot of people I talk to still don't really understand it. They're trying to wrap their mind around this ranked choice concept. But I mean, where are you on this new system? And if you win, how do you foresee it going, trying to navigate this kind of new, pretty complicated system for voters?
Right. Well, I think there is still some confusion out there for the voters, and I know that the state and many other agencies are looking at putting directions and clarification out for people. So there's pamphlets coming out, there's media, there's a lot of things happening to be helpful in that area. As Lieutenant Governor, it'll be my job to remain neutral and to follow the law and to abide by the will of people and what was voted in. So that's what I will do in that position. Whether I voted for it or not isn't relevant to the voters. I just need to remain neutral and do a good job. And so that's what I'm going to do.
You like this new thing, or what do you?
Do you, Jeff? Do you like this?
No, I voted against it just because of I think the confusion that it's gonna, and we're seeing that right now. I guess we're gonna have a little bit of a practice run in this special congressional House General in August. But I talked to a lot of people that are very smart, educated people, and they're still trying to wrap their mind around it.
So as Nancy said, right now it's the law here in the state of Alaska. So we've got to make this thing work. And we've got to make elections work for everybody so that everybody, doesn't matter what party you're part of or not part of a party, but any voter should feel that the elections in Alaska are sound. That's going to be a big lift. That's going to be a big lift for the Lieutenant Governor. And that's one of the conversations that Nancy and I had, is that we've got to make sure that when people vote, they walk away from that voting booth and they believe that, in fact, their vote does matter, does count, will be calculated, tabulated, counted, however you want to word it correctly, and applied to the individual or the issue that they intended to vote for. But certainly this new system interjects a little bit of uncertainty for a number of Alaskans, and we just all got to work through this and get through this election in a positive manner, again, that has the outcomes that people believe any election should have, and that's that their vote counts.
We're at a point nationally now where so many people don't trust elections. Trump's out there questioning the election. There was some bills in the legislature this year. Senator Shower was pushing some bills. There were some bills in the House.
About 21 bills in the past 2 years. Yeah.
I mean, our would you say our election system right now is secure, and should it be changed or can it be made better?
I think it can be made better. That was the purpose of some of those laws. I think it can be made better. But I do want to also say something. The questioning of these elections started when Trump was elected. Actually, before Trump was elected, Gore and Bush back in the early part of the 2000s. Whenever there's a close election, there's questions on it. There's questions whether there was fraud. There's questions whether there was voting irregularities. And in a country of our size, and even in our state, there are times voting irregularities, and you got to deal with those. If there's voting fraud, you got to pursue them, and you got to prosecute folks that are involved in that. But I would say, I'm hoping for good outcomes in our election, but I would say that we've got some things we can change in our law. This part of the law is the issue. For example, if you leave the state of Alaska and you move somewhere else, but your intent, as the law says, is to return, you may still get a ballot sent to you out of state. That's not something I think Alaskans really want. And so we just want to make sure that our elections are secure, that the folks that are voting actually have the right to vote, that their vote is counted, and that if there's any need for recount, that we have the ballots there and we have people that are going to recount this in an honest fashion.
Well, and that's where it gets kind of complicated, because you said people leave, and there's military, there's people that are working, there's people that are in college. You can't, I mean, somebody can register wherever they want to register to vote, any state. Now, there's this ERIC system, which most states have, where if you register somewhere else, it'll realize there's two and it'll knock you off the other one. But if somebody moves to go to college or military or take a job, or maybe they're living half the year in California or Florida or something, it becomes pretty complicated. I mean, we don't want to purge them from the rolls if they still have a house here, if they intend to return. So I know this has been discussed in the legislature quite a bit, but it seems to me that the concern is generally that if so many people don't believe in the election system, how can you live in a democracy where people don't believe in or trust the election system? It's a very difficult thing to live in a democracy where. I
agree. I think it's a problem. It's a problem for everybody, and we've got to get beyond it. And the way we're going to get beyond it is to reassure and instill back in the process, throughout the entire process, that the elections are being run in a manner that's consistent with what people expect and how people expect elections to be run. But again, I think we always have to strive for perfection in our elections. We always have to have discussions how we can make them better. And again, if people are involved in fraud or up to no good, those folks have got to be held accountable.
I want to ask, so there's 10 tickets for running for governor. 5 are kind of the main ones: you, Nancy Dahlstrom, Bill Walker, Heidi Drygas, Les Guerra, Jessica Cook. And then there's 2 other tickets that are Republicans: Charlie Pierce, Edie Grunwald, and Christopher Kirka and Paul Huper. Now the Republican Party has kind of co-endorsed you guys and Pierce. I guess I just want to get your comments on kind of, you're getting from the right on Kirka on the COVID stuff, and then Pierce is, it's kind of difficult to really understand what I mean, I think you guys probably overlap a lot, but there is kind of 2 sides coming at you from the Republican side. So I guess I want to get your thoughts on that.
But there always is, no matter where you are. Doesn't matter what state you're in. You always have, in a Republican form of government in which the people rule, you always have differing opinions. You always have folks that believe things could be done differently or better or in a different manner. But in the end, we're pretty confident that what we've done the past 4 years, whether it's get us through COVID, deal with earthquakes, deal with negative $3 barrel oil, you name it, Alaska is in better shape today than it was 4 years ago. Our fiscals are in better shape, our bond ratings in better shape, our crime issues are in better shape. The list goes on. And so we believe that we get our message out and people hear that message and we lay out the facts. I'm feeling pretty confident in this election, not cocky at all, but pretty confident. But it's our job to get that message out and communicate with the people of Alaska. But Jeff, you're going to get that in all elections. It's happening all across the country right now. And that's what happens, in my opinion, in a robust republic, in a robust, where democracy and people can vote. They run the show. They're the bosses. The moment we start to think that they're not, that's going to become a problem. But we respect the people of Alaska.
Is it weird not being in a Republican primary? Now you're in this kind of open primary. It's such a different concept. You've run before, Nancy, many times. You were in the legislature. What's it like with an open primary compared to the former party primary?
Well, I don't know that's necessarily weird. It's just different. But, I've always subscribed to the fact that it's great for people to be involved. And so the more good Republicans are involved in this process, the better. And then after this primary is done, those that are not number one will hopefully jump on the wagon and support the number one team, which we hope to be.
Jeff, we govern for all Alaskans. It's just not one party. We happen to be Republicans, that's true, but we have a very, very interesting state in which many, many people are not part of a party. But
more people are not part of a party than 60%.
Right, and we have a number of different parties that other states may not have to the degree we have.
The Clowns Party.
I'm sorry?
We have the Clowns Party.
Okay.
Not sure what that is, but it's on there.
Okay. But these are all Alaskans, and we have to govern for all Alaskans. And we have to have a conversation with all Alaskans to make sure that we state our case and make our case that we deserve to be returned. But we want to be a governor and lieutenant governor for all Alaskans.
I want to ask, recently there was some coverage on the amount of state employees. There's a whole bunch of vacancies. I think it's up to a quarter. It's hard to find, many businesses are talking about how hard it is to find people. How much of a concern is that for, finding state workers and in general, just overall for the private sector as well? It's really been challenging.
It's tough, not just in the state, as you mentioned, not just the public sector, the private sector, but across the country. I'm talking to governors frequently, and they're running into the same problem. Businesses are running into the same problem. And, it's these distortions to some degree that resulted from this pandemic, and also how the world itself is reordering things with supply chain issues and so forth. So it's a complicated issue. We're going to get through it. People have been talking about the doom and gloom, and I'm not saying that's necessarily what you're bringing up, but people have been talking about issues like this for literally thousands of years, and in America ever since we became a country. But things always seem to get better. We get through difficult times and things get better. We get through difficult times and things get better. And so I think we'll get through this. We'll figure this out. We'll get things back on track as a country and as a world, certainly as a state, and we're going to be better for it.
Governor, I want to ask you, a few months ago, you appointed Ellie Rubenstein to the Permanent Fund Board of Trustees, and she's the daughter of Dave Rubenstein, the billionaire, and then Alice Rogoff, who used to own the Dispatch and the Anchorage Daily News. And I think for a lot of people, that was kind of like, whoa, Where'd that come from? So I guess why did you choose her to serve on the permanent fund board?
If anyone knows Ellie, smart lady, Alaskan, lives in Alaska, votes in Alaska, hunts in Alaska. As you know, Jeff, there's a hunting community in Alaska, a big one. Actually, there's one nationwide, but in Alaska there's a big hunting community, and you get to know folks. It's like a family, and so I got to know Ellie, sharp individual. The other thing we started a conversation on a while back was the fact that she's a graduate from Purdue in food. In Alaska, that was an interesting conversation. Several conversations I've had with her on food security, et cetera. But I would say that when you have somebody that's pretty sharp, as we do a number of folks on the permanent fund board, adding another sharp individual is only going to help Alaska and its investments.
Nancy, I want to ask you if you win and you're the lieutenant governor, what is your
When we win.
when you win? There you go. And just generally, I guess, what is your big goal, or what would you say the most important thing is looking forward here in the next 4 years?
Well, the governor kind of touched on it a little bit, Jeff, and that is that everybody needs to know that their vote counts. They need to know that when they vote, that it is counted and it's valuable. And so, like the governor said, we can always do things better, and I agree with that. I think in our personal life, in our work life, everything, we should always look at where we're at, and we should say what ways can we do it better. And just like Division of Elections, there are some fantastic, hardworking people there. And my first order of business is going to be to go in and review and see what's happening, and then what can we do to take it up a notch and make it just a little bit better. If people have their trust renewed in Division of Elections, and they don't have to question that, and they know that the integrity's there, I think that will ease a lot of minds.
Jeff, you could vote now.
You can. It started yesterday.
Started
voting.
yesterday.
That's correct.
So, Governor, I want to ask you, what would you say your biggest accomplishment has been so far in the last 4 years, and then if you have 4 more years, what's your big goal?
Yeah, not bragging, but seriously, recovering from an earthquake, recovering from the virus. I think we had some of the best numbers in the country in many respects. People thought we're going to get wiped out. That didn't happen. Alaskans pulled together, and this is really all about Alaskans pulling together. Our unemployment, like other places, is at all-time lows, record lows. Our fiscals are in much better shape today than they were when we got in. We inherited a $1.6 billion deficit. We just put billions of dollars into savings. Looking forward, we have to look at Alaska, Jeff, not in terms of tomorrow or the next day or the next legislative session. We really have to build out an Alaska for the next 50 years. I'll give you an example. There's no doubt that the Arctic is melting. There's no doubt that the world is reordering itself as a result of these wars, this virus, supply chain issues. Alaska is going to figure prominently in the future of this world. If we continue to have warming seas, we're going to have trans-Arctic ships coming over. You're going to have places like Nome, potentially Kotzebue, Barrow, that are going to become strategic cities for this state. We're going to have to grow our own food. We have to establish a robust agricultural system, not just farms, but system in the state of Alaska, so we never have to depend on other states or other countries again for our existence. We need to continue, I believe, being an oil and gas giant, because the world is going to want our oil and gas, but we do it well here. But at the same time, we want to capitalize on all of the improved technology, for example, in renewables. And as we mentioned earlier, nukes, for example, these micro nukes are really, they could be potentially a real game changer for Alaska. But I think that Alaska is poised to become a fully mature state that has industries and sectors within its state that takes care of us, takes care of the people of Alaska. And I would anticipate Alaska is going to continue to grow. Our economy is going to continue to grow. And so we're going to be planning for a state that'll exist here in the next 10, 20, 50 years, and I think that's crucial.
There's next year going to be a lot of new legislators, depending on how some of the races go. It could be almost half the legislature could be new. It's already going to be at least more than 20 new legislators. That's a third. Do you feel like there's a good chance or bad chance we're going to get this fiscal situation dividend resolved next year? Or is it going to be 4 more, years of this? And is it going to be, how difficult is it going to be to work with a lot of new legislators, many of which have never served in the legislature before? Some are coming back, probably like Craig Johnson and Dan Sadler are running, but there's a lot of folks that have never been to Juneau. And I've spent the last 4 years there, and it took me, honestly, a couple of years to, you were both there. It takes a couple of years to just figure things out, just basic things. So I mean, do you think we're going to resolve this dividend issue and this fiscal situation, or is it going to be 4 more years of every year, kind of at the end, this big fight?
I think most Alaskans would like to get this fiscal issue, as you would say, solved. I mean, we've proposed a whole number of different approaches that do involve the people of Alaska, because again, I think it makes a lot of sense to involve the people because of the initiative and referendum process. But with that said, I'm always optimistic. Every year I'm optimistic that we'll come up with some solutions that benefit the people of Alaska. And I'm actually looking forward to next year, not just because there may be new people, but every year there's a different dynamic. And every year I think we have tremendous opportunity to come together. There were a number of things that we accomplished this year. I mean, the READS Act, for example, was one which was bipartisan. Aspects of the budget, I think, we worked together well on. Public safety, we worked together well on. So, contrary to what some may be saying, or you may be reading somewhere, we actually finished on a pretty good note, and I'm looking forward to next year. I think we're going to get a lot of heavy lifting done.
You mentioned the READS Act. I'm going to ask you about that. The Senate passed it, I think, unanimously. There was a whole bunch of discussion in the House. It got pretty contentious. A lot of people, including myself, thought it was going to get 20. It was going to fail at 2020, and it got 21. How surprised? And I believe you were working with Senator Tom Begich on that. Democrats were in the Senate pushing it. Everybody voted for it in the Senate. How surprised were you that passed, and how much work behind the scenes was done on that? Because I know it was a pretty surprising outcome for a lot of folks.
A lot of work. What I was surprised about, Jeff, to be honest with you, is that there was even any question about having to improve our reading outcomes for our kids. By any measure, we could be doing a lot better in reading in the state of Alaska, and it's fundamental. But that was probably the biggest surprise is some people, for reasons that only they can explain, were hesitant to support a reading bill. I'll give you an example. Places like Mississippi and Florida, they went through this a decade or even more ago in terms of their students not performing well in reading. They grabbed that by the reins. They made some difficult decisions. They passed some very important bills. And as a result, their reading outcomes have improved dramatically. That's what we want to have here in Alaska. So I guess the only surprise for me was, I was hoping it would pass. It did pass. Was that some folks voted against it. And I don't know what their alternative is to improving our reading outcomes.
One more thing, at the end of the last session, there was a push on some of these campaign donation limits, and the bill kind of was almost there at the end, and it kind of fell apart, and we're here without limits. And you've got some big donations. Your brother, some business folks have given you, and Governor Walker as well got some big 6-figure donations. Where are you? I think before you said you were okay with no limits as long as it was transparent. Are you still there? Should there be limits? Or should there be where it is now, where it's kind of no limits?
I think in a free society, people should have the option to be able to donate to whom they want and how much they want. But I do believe that there needs to be transparency and there needs to be reporting. I think that's incredibly important. This new legislature coming in, if they make a different decision on what type of limits, if any, there should be, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. As long as the people of Alaska aren't disenfranchised, and as long as the people get an opportunity to weigh in on these elections, I think it's a free association issue, but I think it's a free speech issue as well.
Would you sign a bill on limits? Or?
It depends on what the bill looks like. I say that about all bills, Jeff. To speculate what a bill will be and say I would sign something, I need to see exactly what it looks like, and I need to scrutinize that bill to make sure it's a bill that's going to benefit Alaska.
What's it like with no limits? You ran before the legislature several times. I think it was back then 1,000, or it was 500. It was 1,000, then it went to 500.
Well, actually, there was a time when you had to report anything over 100.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's been 500 since 2006, right?
Right. So, you just work within the realms of the laws and statutes that are in place. But I agree with the governor on people. I think there's some value in people being able to put their money where their mouth is, put their money where their values are. But the reporting is critical. We shouldn't have people hiding behind, walls on that.
What's been so far? It's been a few months. You've been, I guess, probably 3 months. You've been the running mate. What's been your biggest surprise, or what's been it's different running statewide, obviously, than a House district.
Well, I'll tell you, the greatest thing is being able to talk to people all over the state and find out what it is that they're concerned about. and what their different values are. And I love being able to be the mouthpiece sometimes for some of the governor's messages, things like food security and the just those types of things that, having been in Department of Corrections, I will tell you, if we had run out of food at any time, I would have had a real bad situation on my hand. So, just for families, everybody, everywhere, we need to be interested in those types of things. And so it's great to be able to go and have those conversations with Alaskans. Public safety is something that is always talked about no matter where I am in the state. And it's nice to be able to reiterate the governor's strong message on that.
So we're wrapping up here, Governor. The 2 weeks away, the primary.
The 45 minutes is gone already?
I think we might have gone a little over 45, but I lost track. It's been so great. It's 2 weeks away from the primary, and then there's this ranked choice general. But for the primary, it's pick one. Why should folks vote for you and give you 4 more years?
Great question. So there was an old commercial like, who do you want to answer? Who do you want to have answering the phone at 3 a.m? And that really pertained to a president.
That was the Obama Hillary.
There you go. Right. Well, we've answered the phone at 3 a.m. multiple times in my administration. Recovering from an earthquake, some of the biggest fires in the state's history. Negative $3 a barrel oil, which we've never seen before. The virus, for example, the unemployment issues that you're talking about. We've dealt with everything head on. We've made no excuses. We didn't whine or cry. We put in the time to deal with these issues, and we've gotten through them, and we're getting through them. Looking into the future, we've got to create an Alaska for our kids and grandkids. We have to be a growing state where people want to move here. We have to be attractive to keep our own kids here. We have tremendous opportunities here in Alaska, Jeff. I mean, we have unlimited resources. For example, one of the things that we have that we take for granted that they don't take for granted in the lower 48 anymore is water. We have 3 times the water of any other state. We have incredible amounts of fresh water, longest coastline compared to other states in the entire country. We have oil, we have gas. We have probably more potential farmland than any other state in the country to grow our own food. Our position in the Pacific is phenomenal. The Arctic, if it continues to warm, we'll take advantage of that so that we position Alaska to be the North Central Pacific sovereign that we are in terms of North America and Asia. I think the people of Alaska should vote for me because we've proven over the last 4 years that we can get through some tough times. We inherited budget deficits, bad bond ratings, crime. We've turned that all around. And so my promise to the people of Alaska is we'll continue to put in the time, put in the hard work, and I think make great decisions working with Alaskans for Alaskans.
Well, Governor, I want to thank you for coming here with Nancy Dahlstrom, your running mate, Republican Incumbent Governor Mike Dunleavy and his running mate Nancy Dahlstrom. The primary is August 16th. As the governor noted, the early voting has started and the absentee applications are due on August 6th. So get out there and vote. And we're going to be doing more interviews with other candidates running for governor, the top 5 tickets, and stay tuned for those. And I want to thank, again, GCI for being our kind of main sponsor here to make live streams like this possible. Really appreciate GCI doing that for us. So stay tuned for the next interview with the candidates running for governor. And I want to thank Governor Dunleavy and Nancy Dahlstrom as running mate. Thanks.